Thank you so much for coming on to the show. Yeah, I just want to start by saying, again, I first discovered you on Kevin's show, Transcend Together, and yeah, for me, like the thing that really like wanted me to have that conversation with you is, I think I just sensed like from the start it was like a real sense of like being real, being authentic, but as well as that is like a high level of understanding. And for me, that's what I'm always trying to. I'm trying to connect with people like this now, and because I haven't really done that as much before. But yeah, just the way that you were talking, it's like I think there's a higher level of understanding about this like the whole like spiritual like world, and I think a lot of people are coming into this space now, and we're kind of grasping it, but some people aren't grasping the full essence of like what it truly is. And obviously we're all on our journey to like understand it a little bit more, understand ourselves a bit more. But yeah, I just like really gravitated to the way you spoke, and yeah, just there's just a lot of the things that you were saying. I just wanted to first ask you, or maybe introduce yourself first, and then from that, I would like to know like, what's your thoughts on spirituality? Like, what does that mean to you? What is like the spiritual journey like that people are taking? Like, what does that mean for you?
Yeah, beautiful. First of all, thank you, brother, receiving that, and yeah, just honored to be here. So, yeah, I guess a little background about me. It's been a wild ride, and I think it's really started from such an early age of having these experiences, and growing up myself within this Australian culture. I found a lot of these experiences that I was having even from such young age. My family are pretty open. My mum's an environmental scientist. She's written some books on like astral travel and talking to
Okay.
aliens.
Yeah.
So I've always kind of been exposed to it, and having even these profound experiences during meditations from a young age, spending a lot of time growing up in a Buddhist temple,
Awesome.
and like even in the dream state, like some of the things I would sleep talk in tongues and have these astral experiences, and not really have an understanding of it.
Hmm.
And I think for me personally, there was a lot of there's some fear around that,
Of
of the
course.
unknown and the not understanding, and and so much of a big part of my work is just exactly like this. I've been able to open these conversations because for me growing up, I felt very misunderstood. I didn't feel like there was a lot of people who could really relate to or understand these experiences I was having, and that led me. It led me to a lot of suppression. It really I wasn't open to the experiences, and that suppression led to, yeah, really like me struggling a lot with depression and isolation, and not feeling like I really fit into the sort of
Yeah.
society almost.
Yeah.
And that's why, so a lot of the work that resonates, and so for me, just a quick breakdown there was like, um, like a lot of my early teenage years was really struggling with my mental health with depression, to the point of, like really, suicidal thoughts, um, and then actually I was in a pretty bad car accident when I was about 16, which, you know, I should be dead. That's everything for me has been a second chance. And the
Crazy. Yeah.
doctors, yeah, and the doctors always, they said, it's a miracle you're alive.
Yeah.
It was interesting. So like I was having these suicidal thoughts, and then I was like, death
Yeah.
really came knocking on my door, and then I was all of a sudden I was like, whoa, hang on. And it really taught me the power of gratitude, of
Hmm.
of how lucky I am to be here, and how much of a miracle life truly is.
Hmm.
And I think for me is when we talk about spirituality, because I come from this a very academic sort of family and background, and I've always been a bit of a man of science, so to speak.
Hmm.
I spoke about this recently, and I guess if we look at science and spirituality, I mean, these are two sides of the same coin.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like the deeper I dive into science, the closer I get to spirituality, and vice versa. The deeper I dive into spirituality, the closer I get to science.
Yeah.
And so I kind of like, for me, spirituality is, it's kind of like a way to understand the magic that exists around us, because
I love it.
there's so much magic. There's
Mm.
so much magic in the world, and I feel as though we've kind of forgotten about the magic that exists around us. And I always say that, magic is just kind of science we don't understand yet. And, we can relate that back to if we were to go into a tribe in the Amazon with something like a lighter,
Mm.
like the ability to create fire. That's
Yeah.
magic. And we look at technology these days. We look at phones. There's so much magic there that we've been able to observe, because it's what science really is observing and then, taking down those observations and creating hypothesis and then testing those hypotheses. And so science, in a sense of where we are in our world today, is incredible. It's really, I think it's testament to where we are as a species and our evolution, that we have this understanding of the universe.
Mm.
And if you look at some of the great minds of our time, like the Isaac Newtons, the Nicholas Tesla, the Leonardo da Vinci, the Albert Einsteins, and we look at their work and how much they've given to the world of science. And a beautiful quote here from Isaac Newton is that, he said that he can only see, from such great heights because he's standing on the shoulders of giants.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is sort of the accumulation, the progress that we've made collectively as a species. And to tie that in, if you look at this work, Albert Einstein is someone who I really, look up to and love his work and sort of what he did and what he brought to the world. But he has a lot of very deep spiritual teaching in his practices as well, and sort of what he talks about. And so I think this is a clear, like, if we think about these great minds, I think so many people, I think, oh, science, I think, like Einstein, but
Mm.
maybe they're not as aware of some of the spiritual thoughts that he had as well. So I guess in a nutshell, it's kind of like spirituality, I guess, comes down to this beautiful, sometimes we have to believe something before we can see it. Whereas science is kind of the flip side of that, is that, we have to see it before we can believe it.
Yeah.
And I think for me, there's nothing greater. There's no greater force. We've got love and trust. This also comes from belief.
Yeah.
I think this human belief that we have is it is the ultimate superpower.
It
The
really
fact,
is.
the
Yeah.
fact that
Yeah.
we can believe in something that doesn't even exist. Look at money. Money is a belief system.
Yeah.
It's crazy, but it runs our entire lives.
Yeah.
Like, most of the money in the world isn't real. It doesn't
Yeah.
exist. It's just some numbers on a screen, and it's
And we
something.
all agreed to believe in. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. There's a great book, Sapiens. I'm not sure if you've read it.
Haven't. I've heard
Um,
of it though. I can't remember who wrote it. Yeah.
yeah, fantastic read. Urav, and he was
Yeah.
the professor of history at Oxford, I'm pretty sure it was, and he writes, and it's incredible. I highly recommend it. But he really looks into this about belief systems and
Mm.
how that shapes who we are. So I guess the core of my work really is about helping people to find that belief within themselves. Because when we can believe in ourselves, we can love ourselves, and then we can bring that into the world. Because I believe in a better world. I believe that there is so much magic around us, and if we can all agree on something like money, like, what's stopping us from,
Yeah.
coming together and having this belief to create this world of harmony and peace? And that's really the core, I guess, of my beliefs, is that imagination is the greatest intelligence, and that's the only thing we're limited by, is our imagination.
Amazing. Honestly, I think there's like a lot in there that you said. I don't know. I think just the way you speak, it's amazing. Honestly, it like really resonates with me. I think the science part, like, that's kind of like what this whole show is, what I created it about, is essentially trying to push science in a different light, because I know like a lot of it right now, it's kind of like the way people view science is very like, this is just numbers and logic and like facts and like, again, things that are seen, like the very like physical aspect to it. But exactly what you said, and I agree, and I want to bring it more into this world, is there is no difference between science and spirituality. It is two sides of the same coin. And I think as we go deep into understanding spirituality, again, we will see science, and we go deeper in understanding science, we'll see spirituality. It's just our level of like comprehension or understanding of it. Because if we just see it as a certain thing, no matter what it is, it's like we're either limited by our consciousness of how we can see the totality, or like the limitedness of the totality that we see. And I think that, yeah, everything you just said about bridging the science and spirituality, and even the like I love the way you said it, using magic, like there's magic in the world. And that's what I've always like believed in, is the like just the word I use is always like possibility, but it's still the same, it's imagination. It's like what is possible. And I think diving into each end, whether it's more science, more spirituality, it's opening up these possibilities of like what this universe is capable of, what we're capable of. And yeah, I really love that. I think like when you talked about belief, there's something that has always been like really interesting for me, is when you said the like when you believe in something before you see it versus seeing something to believe it, because that's where most of us like have been like brought up on. It's like you have to see it to believe it type thing. But there's so much, like so many people that essentially like they grow up in a place where it's like there's no reason, there's no observation that you would believe like they would succeed or like achieve a certain thing or get to a certain place. And it's like the only thing that got them there was belief. It was the belief in self. Like it was them imagining something and seeing something that no one else would have believed. They don't see it. It's like, let's say someone grew up poor, and it's like some people would be like, oh, how are you going to make it out of this situation? But it's like their level of belief actually allowed them to change their whole like reality. And I think cultivating that belief and understanding the possibilities, the magic that can happen through belief, is something I like hold very highly and like really push everyone to like cultivate. So I'm curious, in terms of belief for you and like cultivating that belief systems and yeah, just self-belief in people, like is there any sort of thoughts that, or processes that you went through, or any thoughts that you might give to someone else like in that process?
Absolutely. And thank you for sharing that. Yeah, it definitely resonates so deeply with me. Um, and I think when it comes to this, one of my core beliefs, when we look at consciousness, and for me, I've always been a deep diver. I've always had these big questions. I've always been so curious about, why does that work like that? Why did that person do this? And
Yeah.
I've always had this deep curiosity of how things work and what life really is. And I think when I drop back to this, I look at consciousness and awareness. Um, I really believe that so much that's happening in my external reality is an internal reflection. So it's like my number one priority is making sure that I'm in my highest vibration at all times. So a lot of my coaching, a lot of my background, I worked in about 8 years overseas, predominantly in Germany, working in like employee development and health management in big companies. And so much of my experience has been coming back to sort of energy management and understanding what energy is and what a vibration is, and how much control we have over our own vibration. So, because I guess that on the grand scheme of things, everything is energy. It's like we just see things the way they are because of our senses and the way we perceive things. So, and there's this beautiful quote that, life is 10% what happens to me and 90% how I react to it.
Yeah.
And this was such a huge, I'm lucky that I sort of had such beautiful parents growing up. My father is he has a lot of wisdom, in quite a simple way. Like he toured the world playing rugby, and he is quite in some sense he's just he's kind of very loving and quite simple, but he's also quite profound with some of the wisdom he would share. And one of the things that he would see in me was my struggles. My struggles with like, what is this life? I was always very observant as a kid, and kind of almost a bit sad. I was observing things in the world, and I was kind of feeling a lot. And he would just constantly reiterate to me that attitude is everything. Of just that power of attitude is, although we can't necessarily change something externally, we can change the way that it affects us.
Mm.
And this is like a very simple analogy. Like, we can't control whether it's raining or not. I mean, without getting into a much
Yeah,
deeper
yeah,
conversation
yeah,
about geoengineering
yeah,
and
yeah.
weather control, but we can decide to take an umbrella with us. And
Yeah.
and this is just a very simple analogy of how life, in my opinion, works. Is that, and this way, I guess a lot of my work has brought me into like understanding emotions, understanding the power of emotions, and that, emotions are energy, they're energy in motion. And so understanding how they work, understanding things like our breath, how much control we have over our nervous system, how we can always come back, and we want to sort of get to that baseline, using the parasympathetic or the sympathetic nervous systems, nutrition,
Yeah.
and the importance of nutrition. And this is something that, going deeper into mental health and things like depression, like, how much of serotonin production is, in the stomach, and so
Mm.
how much of what we eat can affect that. And then also the energy of what we're eating, and not just what we're eating, but nutrition to me is like one side of it, but it's like the people we spend time with.
Yeah, everything we intake. Yeah, yeah,
Exactly. Everything we're taking in, the information, the news we're reading, the books we're reading, all of these things, this intake, it really has an effect on us. And I think it's so much of my work in the past, especially, and still now, to what the work I do. But when I was working a lot more like one-on-one clients, and in big corporate, and helping companies to get the best out of their employees, understanding that happy and healthy employees are productive employees. And so, like, a lot of that work really came back to, that what we're intaking, and then also things like movement, and just the importance of what energy really is, and how we have the ability to create energy from within ourselves as well. And so I think that it was something I actually experienced. I ran my own IT business when I finished school, and ran that for about 6 years. And it was something of an example of where, like, it was something I was quite good at, and I enjoyed. Like, I like technology, I like working with it, but it
mm.
wasn't really my passion.
Yeah,
And I think this here is like passion and emotions is so powerful about creating energy. And I actually experienced a burnout when I was about 23. And this really, this was linked with, still struggling with my mental health, not really sleeping well, being a young man in Australia, trying to fit in and partying a lot and drinking, and not really being in my authenticity and my flow. And so it was this experience of a burnout, which really, between the car accident and the burnout, had such profound effects on my life, in terms of, my mortality, and my energy. So a lot of the work I do, and a lot of my belief around this is about energy, and how we can best cultivate our energy. And this is where things like meditation completely changed my life. Completely
that's
changed my
awesome.
life. And like meditation, breath work, because I started to understand that I have the ability to have this relationship with myself, and quiet my mind. So my mind, when I was young, was always so, like, just constantly, and
Yeah,
I
yeah.
just didn't know how to turn it off. Like, I'd lay there awake at night and think, "Oh, it's 2 a.m." and my mind just, I didn't know how to shut it down.
Mm.
Uh, and this is where meditation really helped me to sort of quiet my mind, and breath work as well. So then I guess the next stage of this is not just quieting the mind, but learning how to cultivate that relationship within ourselves.
Mm.
So this stems from, I guess, my belief there is like, we can be our own worst enemy or our own best friend. So much of my journey was, firstly, like, I didn't have that relationship with myself. It wasn't a healthy relationship. I was very hard on myself. I was a bit of a perfectionist.
Yeah.
I always felt this. I'm not sure if you know about human design,
Yeah.
but I'm a 5-line splenic projector, and then the 5-line, especially a 5-line projector, is all about um, the savior. So
Okay.
I sort of grew up looking after my mom and her struggles with things like depression as well, and so I felt like growing up I had the weight of the world on my shoulders,
Mm.
and that kind of that led me. It was almost crippling, It sort of
Yeah.
led me to inaction, and so much of this was changing that relationship first and foremost to quieten that inner critic,
Mm.
to quiet my mind so I could be more free. And now a lot of my experience has been like delving deeper into a lot of like tantra, for example, of really and spirituality, like really cultivating that relationship myself, to realize that that voice in my head is still me. It's that it could be however we want to talk about it. That could be my connection with the divine, with the universe, with God, however we want to phrase that.
Yeah.
But understanding that that is still me. We are all one on the grand scheme of things, and how I could cultivate that relationship with myself. So this is something that I think is so important, that everything starts here. Everything starts from within. And
Mm.
so much my focus in my early years, and again, this was my dad again with his wisdom, was, another mantra he would always sort of tell me was that, before you help anyone else, you have to help yourself. And I realized so much in my younger years, I was running around trying to help everyone else. I was trying to fix people's
Mm.
problems, or like, and because that was at the core. I felt people so intensely, so I wanted them to be happy.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
what I couldn't realize, and what took me a long time to really deeply integrate, probably wasn't until about 27, around the time I Saturn return, that I really understood how I have to choose myself first, and all this love that I have for others, to harness that and give to myself, because I can't pour from an empty cup. But if my cup is full, I can give the overflow. I don't need that, and
Yeah.
I think this has been such an important lesson. And this is sort of a core belief for me, is that if we all helped ourselves, if we all started from within, there will be no one else to help. There'll be no healing to be done,
Yeah.
because we're
Yeah.
all, we're all coming from this space of full, complete beings.
100%. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. So I guess that's a real core belief for me, is that it starts from within.
Yeah. Mm.
It starts from here. I have to help myself first. And that when I'm in my highest vibration, then everything that's happening around me, doesn't matter how crazy it is, that I can remain that calm. I can be that calm
You can
amongst
control that energy. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Now that makes sense, man. I think a lot of what you're saying, I I really really understand, because that's very similar to actually how I grew up as well. Like, I was like the most observant person ever. I think I was essentially sad a lot, just because I was intaking a lot of energy from people. Like, for me, I used to just, like, in certain situations, I would be the person that's just like standing like to the side. Like, I don't know if you did that, but I'd just be like standing in the corner, kind of just really watching everyone, and really like really just trying to dissect and understand, like what you said, ask all these questions, like why does this work like this, why is this happening. And I used to really, yeah, ask all these questions about how, like, why humans were behaving in a certain way, like why this person would act this way. And I would just really like tap into like people's energy and really try to understand that. But I think when I was younger, it was that same similar thing of like intaking too much and trying to help everyone and trying to do all this stuff. But there's essentially like that place of like, I need to be kind of strong within myself first to let that overflow. So I think everything you're saying, like, I really genuinely understand as well. Um, Something that's interesting with what you're saying, I'm curious on your take. So I have like this like theory, kind of, like, I'm not sure how many people have talked about it, but it's basically like consciousness working in a feedback loop. That's the way I view consciousness. Is it's this, essentially everything is us, right? But we are getting information from ourselves, aka the world, and intaking that and becoming a more developed, complex version of ourselves. And I feel like the one analogy or simple way I can kind of describe it is like every element is essentially a compound of hydrogen. it's just like it's feeding on itself, right? Like it's like it's just like one what is it, one
Molecule.
proton, yeah,
Yeah.
one proton, yeah. Yeah, it's like one is the hydrogen, and then it's like you add on more and more and more. It's like it's just becoming different, whether it's carbon, oxygen, whatever it is. But that's the way I view everything in life. It's like we're communicating with ourselves, aka the world, and we're taking in that information and what understanding the world as much as we know about ourselves, and then developing a different, more complex version of ourselves. And by complex, I just mean you've gained more information or more awareness, right? And
Yeah,
that's like, yeah,
great, very great there. Yeah.
it's
Um,
it's like
that,
what we do every day. Like, sorry to cut you off. Like, it's like what we do every day in terms of like we wake up and we gain all this information, we experience all these things, we go to sleep, and it's like the next day, like most people say, like we want to be better versions of ourselves, we want to grow, and it's like, what is that? You're like literally taking in information and then becoming a more developed, complex version of yourself. So, yeah.
yeah, I mean, conscious evolution.
Mm, mm,
This is what it's all about for me, and I think there's so many things that resonate. And like I said, I think it's such a great theory, and um, I guess when we look at this, like another one of my favorite quotes is that the only person that I should be better than is the person that I was yesterday,
yeah, yeah,
and I don't have to be miles ahead, not just that, just
yeah,
slight,
definitely.
and I think this is a struggle with where we've lend ourselves in the conditioning of those complexities, because there has been so much growth. And if we look at like, even if we look at the Big Bang, of how quickly things expand. And I think that's what's happened, especially in the last 100 years. And if we look at these different ages of like, the agricultural revolution and the industrial revolution and now the information revolution, and how fast things are growing. And then we can look at computers. We look at the speed of computers and how quickly they're growing exponentially. And I think this has created some challenges, where so often, especially with things like social media and things like this, where there's a lot of comparison. It's
Yeah,
like, we're kind of, a lot of people are getting off their track, off their journey, and what's happening, and it's the nature of the ego as well, where we often, if we look at social media, people are often, they're putting on let's say someone takes 10 photos,
mm,
they're going to choose the best one, and then they're probably going to edit it, and then they're going to post it online, and then they're going to write something about it where they might spend, it's not just ad lib. So it's
yeah,
like, so it's like what they're doing is, it's like their highlight scenes, and these photos were taken on a holiday, so it's, what's happening is, quite often, is that I think one of these conditions of our modern society, especially of our capitalist global society that
mm,
we've created, is that quite often we're comparing someone else's highlight scenes, or highlight reel rather, to our deleted scenes,
yeah,
because
yeah,
we're then looking at like all the stupid shit, and we're making that comparison. And I think that's a really unfair comparison.
definitely, definitely.
So I think this is where it's sort of grown and become complex. And this, but again, it comes back to like, just, looking at myself and staying on my track. And like you say here, and so I love like sacred geometry. I got like sacred
Love
geometry
it.
tattooed all over me, and looking at like pattern recognition,
Mm,
and we talk about karmic cycles. So I think this is that there is this feedback loop, if we're conscious enough, if we're aware of it. And I guess this is like when things happen in my life, when I have these perceived problems, this was something when I was younger, I'd be like, oh, why is this happening? Why is this happening to me? Like, kind of that victim mentality.
mm,
And then it was like, when I'm in that victim mentality, I'm giving my power away, and it's a problem. But when I can start to realize that, well, actually, this is the feedback that myself, the universe, is giving to me, that this problem is occurring because I'm out of alignment somewhere.
mm,
So it's no longer a problem; it's actually a challenge.
yeah,
And within this challenge, there lies an opportunity for me to level up. And so it's like, it's gone from seeing things as a problem to then taking ownership to realize, oh, there's something I can do about this. So it's more of a challenge.
mm,
Um, but that's actually, now I see it as a gift. So when something is a perceived problem in my world, I'm like, amazing. Like this is an opportunity for me to level up, there's something I've missed. There's something that I'm not seeing.
Like the pattern. Yeah.
Exactly. And then so there's some external, there's an external happening that's saying to me, providing me this direct feedback to say,
Yeah, exactly.
are you sure? Are you
Yeah.
sure this is where you're meant to be? Are you sure that's what you should be doing?
Mm.
So I really resonate with that theory of this feedback loop
Mm.
that I think exists. And I guess this is also then to realize, I think it's so important to come back to realize that sometimes it's okay. Like, actually, not even sometimes. I guess on a bigger scheme of things, it's like I'm really, I'm not sure if you read The Power of Now.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, and like brilliant, and so much brilliance in there, and I really have this belief of the eternal now.
Yeah.
That there's so much power in that presence and being here. That we are, in my opinion, we are infinite beings. Like we're just going to keep learning until we get it. So this ability to understand that all of these things are happening for us, that everything that's happening to me is happening for me, and also to realize that everything is perfect
Mm.
always. Like everything is in that. There's an intelligence in the divine, in the universe, which is so far beyond anything we can possibly comprehend with this
Yeah.
monkey mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's we're evolving and we're
Yeah.
understanding more. This comprehension is growing, and I think, I've delved into deep ceremonies, whether it be through breath work or plant medicine, where I've seen those complexities, where I've seen the information that's written in my DNA, where I can understand the what's written in the stars and the science of the astrology and the pyramids. Like I'm fascinated by like ancient civilizations and
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
these structures. I think like we still don't understand that. We
Pretty
still
much. Yeah. Yeah. We
you know, we
really don't know. Yeah.
we don't know, and we still today would struggle to to build the pyramids to the exact precision that they were built. Let's say 5,000 years ago, if you know,
Yeah.
given what we know of science. So I think there's like this understanding of, if we had all of that knowledge, I think it would be very difficult for us to then be fully present and enjoy this human experience and to feel the things we do. So
Mm.
I think that everything's been created in a divine essence,
Mm.
so that we can enjoy this, so that there is a power that's greater than us, which is also us.
Mm.
But it's like for us not to have to delve into these things. It's like to trust. And this is where it comes back to belief and trust.
Mm.
To trust that there is this magic. There is this magic. If we look back at the science of the chances of life existing
Yeah.
in this planet, like we just drop back to the sperm finding the egg.
Yeah.
You know,
400 trillion to one or something like that.
crazy.
It's like some crazy number. Yeah.
It's crazy. And our parents meeting and like the formation of Earth, all
Yeah.
like the formation of plants, the ozone layer, the atmosphere. Like there are so many
Yeah.
things and so many collisions that had to happen over such a ridiculous period of time, 13.864
Yeah.
billion years in our knowable universe.
Yeah.
And it's like once we can really understand that the
The vastness of that, like.
the vastness and exactly, and just like the pure, like the luck, that's not luck.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and it's like there's this quote, I can't remember, as a German, it might have been, I can't remember who it was, maybe Nietzsche, and he said that God, might have actually been Einstein, and he said that God doesn't play dice.
Mm.
That this isn't luck, this isn't random chance
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
we're here. There are divine synchronicities. There are so many things, and all we have to do is to be able to have that awareness to see and to connect the dots, to realize we are blessed. We are so lucky to be here right now, having this human experience.
Mm.
And I think once we can really understand that, it makes it quite difficult to be in this state of depression or in this state of victim mentality, when we realize that every single person alive today has won the lottery. They've won the
Yeah.
cosmic lottery.
Yeah.
And of course, with the caveat that there are different levels. I mean, it's easy for me to sit here in Australia with a lot of freedom, an able body, food on the table. Like it's easy for me to say that. But even like I've done a lot of traveling. I've traveled to a lot of third world countries. I've spent time like I spent a lot of time in the jungles of like Myanmar and India, and
Mm.
we've seen these children, but people with nothing, like nothing in our
Yeah. Yeah.
materialist capitalist society, and seeing how happy they are. You know, seeing truly that sense of community, of understanding that we are so blessed, so lucky to be alive today. So
Hundred percent.
that's really at the core of it for me, and that I really do believe there is. Yeah, I mean, I'm still, the jury's still out for me exactly. Like, you know, I've delved deep into like different religions and
Mm.
um different, like, you know, the ideas of like Buddhism and reincarnation and
Mm.
karmic patterns. Like, I don't know if I like, if I do something bad this life, I'm going to come back as a
Something
snail
else. Yeah.
life, or you know, I'm not, I can't say for sure. I don't have the exact
Yeah.
science or behind that, but I do believe that our world, our external reality is reacting to our actions and what we are doing.
Hundred
And
percent.
yeah, and that's where so much, that's why so much the core of my work rolls around self-empowerment, of making sure that we're making clear and conscious decisions, and that's coming from a space of knowing who we are, and healing, you know, healing those wounds, or those generational wounds and trauma that's happened. And yeah, and I guess this has grown with the complexity, like you said, you know, that
Mm.
there's been this great outreach and this creative power which we all have.
Mm.
But I think it's so important to be coming from a space of understanding, like, what is mine, like what is true to my belief, to my core, and what is someone else's belief, like what is conditioning, what is a societal expectation, what is actually just a bullshit rule that we've created, and
Just
that we've
stuck.
then,
Yeah.
yeah, that we're just
Yeah.
stuck and we believe in. And you know,
Mm.
it's so, I think it's important to come back to understand what our truth is, and then also to understand that maybe my truth is different to your truth,
Mm.
and that's okay. You know, it's like, if you don't believe what I believe,
It's okay. Yeah.
it's
Don't have
not,
to like kill someone.
yeah, exactly. Like, and
Yeah.
not only is it okay, it's fucking beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, what a world would it be if we all just were looked exactly the same and believed the same things? And you know, what would be the point of that? The
Mm.
point of this is, for me, of creative energy, is to empower people to then step into that, but to be coming back to their own truth.
Mm. I really want to touch on some stuff and then really get into the meat of that, because there's something that you said. It's like the universe is happening, or like the world or life is happening like for us. And I would love to even just add like it's for us by us,
Mm.
and that's changing. For me at least, it was changing the mindset of, again, from the victimhood to the creator, which is it's happening by us also. And it always comes down to just, yeah, really understanding pattern recognition. And like an exercise I've done, which is, I don't know if people have done this or it's a bit strange, but whether it is the when we talk about the Instagram, like people posting the highlights versus your things that you don't feel are very good, or whatever it is, like let's say the good stuff and the bad stuff in your life, really dissect what actions and choices had actually led you to that to those points or positions in life. And for me, it's so interesting because some things that people might put as maybe something random or something's happening to them, if you go back in your choices, it's gonna lead to you. Like you did something that started that first dice roll, and it ended up just going to dominoes effect. And I've actually done that a lot in certain aspects of my life, the good and the bad. And then it flips the script from being the victim of like this is happening, you know, somehow outside of my control, and realizing, oh, I actually took this step like 5 years ago, and I actually like met this person, and that's what led me to this. And it's a bit of a crazy like backtrack, but it actually gives that sense of like, oh shit, like I actually created this in my life somehow, some way, but it's still a dance with the universe. I don't believe it's like 100% you. And I think that's where you talk about it's the world and the universe giving you an opportunity to see yourself in a certain way too. And I think it's again a fun opportunity or challenge for you to recognize like, okay, you can change and create certain patterns, and then the universe is going to give you something to again grow, to have some sort of opportunity to find something a little bit different in yourself. And like when we talk about the self-belief, that's what I always really like. If I had one gift I could give to everyone, it is self-belief. That is it. Because it's just changing that victimhood ideology into the creator, and then from that we are able to heal, we are able to connect, we are able to have difference of opinions, and it's okay. It's like it's coming from that place of like, I'm gonna create what I want to create anyway. It's like you are not gonna change my whole reality completely. We're gonna interact and like, have like our dance of how we interact and change our realities, but at the core of it, it's like we're creating it in that totality of it.
Yeah, I love
Um,
it. It's like it
yeah,
gives also the opportunity to then make a change,
yeah, yeah.
to realize that, yeah, we chose this, we made a decision
Mm,
that got us here,
mm.
but we can also then make a decision to take us out if we're no longer happy with that situation.
Exactly. That's the biggest thing. It's just understanding that if yeah you got yourself in that position, you actually have the ability to like switch. And again, that comes into understanding that we are the creators. And I think that's such an important thing to just keep feeding into ourselves in terms of the feedback loop. And who you're hanging around is, are you hanging around people that are constantly being like, there's the victim mentality of like that's controlling us, so that's changing us, versus the people around you who are just like, we can create our lives, like what do you want to do you want to like create this, do you want to help each other, like,
Yeah,
and cultivating that even within your inner circles is
I think that's
changes.
I think that's a great point, especially in today's climate. Especially with everything that's happening in our world at the moment, and this division that's being created, and this separation. Because the separation is an illusion.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
it's not.
really is.
We're all in one big cosmic soup. There's like everything's all one, and together we are all one. And I mean, we've also created separation so that we can experience ourselves.
Hmm.
But this idea of division, and I think this is something where I see, I've got a lot of friends, we can delve into that now, about COVID or all of
Hmm.
these things. But it's like I see so many people who are giving away their power by getting in the victim mode, and saying it's us first. And it's like, for me, even the systems that are in place, these are systems we've created
Yeah,
at some point. This is
it
something outside of us.
yeah, I think everyone, like, I really want to touch on that, even if we want to dive into that a little bit, because that's something that I think a lot of people have started to like mention and kind of talk a little bit about now. It's like, oh, we created that, but it's like, for a lot of people, they're just like, I didn't create it. Like, what do you mean? How did I create it? And I think if you don't understand that on the macro, you're probably not going to understand the micro of like the patterns that you create in your life. And that's why I think the healing thing is so important, because once you start healing in terms of understanding your patterns, and then controlling what patterns, in terms of choosing what patterns you want to kind of create in your life, the positive feedback or whatever you want to call it, but understanding that in our lives we're creating these things that unfold in like the physical reality, and understanding that at a macro we are also the ones creating these systems and actualizing it, and giving our money and time and energy to actually create that. But I think a lot of people don't kind of connect the two of like, I didn't create this like government, or I didn't create this like money system, like that's not on me. But yeah, how would you like explain that to someone maybe?
I guess a way I look at this as well is that, like, because I love what you say here about us being the creators, and I strongly believe in this. And this is where I guess we get inside the collective consciousness, because in this human experience, we are somewhat limited by our physical destiny. Um, I look, I love to look back more at our evolution,
Hmm.
and sort of our tribal hunter gatherer uh, past, and you look back to like the ice age, you look back to survival. It's very difficult during this time. And let's say let's say we wanted to eat, and there wasn't a lot of food, but there's a woolly mammoth, and there's no way, I don't care how big and strong one individual is, there's no way that one individual can hunt a woolly mammoth by themselves. But what happens is that we can work together. So we can come together and we work together collectively. And then we can take that woolly mammoth down, and then we have enough food to feed the tribe. So I think it's like really understanding like the power of the individual, but then the power of the collective as well.
Yeah.
And I think here with individual empowerment, it can also start to become a bit of it's a responsibility, you know, like, you know, it's everyone thinks it's Spider-Man, but or you know, it was actually George Washington who said that, you know, with great power comes great responsibility. And sometimes that responsibility can almost be overwhelming, because when there are bad things happening in my life, it's like, oh, I've created this situation.
Yeah, people can feel bad and shit. Yeah.
Exactly. So then they can have these negative associations and this guilt, and that's why I think that there are people who, I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that people are waking up. People
100%.
This is a time of great awakening, and it is happening so rapidly. And I see this transition. I'm so excited. I'm so grateful, because I for a long time I thought, am I crazy? Like, is this actually how things are, or you know, why doesn't anyone else see this? And even then, my own waking process has been gradual, and there's been certainly moments of non-conscious action and unconscious action. But it's like there are people who are sort of waking up to that, and who are willing to take responsibility for themselves, their life, and their reality. There are also people then who don't necessarily want to, and I guess that's still a choice. You know, inaction is still action. You know, so indecision is still a decision, and I think when we look at this, there are kind of like, there are followers and there are leaders. And I think in our society, we've kind of almost placed, we've put leaders on a bit of a pedestal.
Definitely.
Leaders aren't necessarily better or more important than followers. I mean, a leader without any followers is just a crazy person. So followers and leaders are of equal importance to a degree, but it's like the leaders have a certain responsibility as well here. And so this is where I think it's about why we've created like government, and why we've created these systems. It's because, yes, sometimes we don't want to have to think about every little thing. It's the same way, I guess an analogy here would be like the way our body works. And if we look at habits, and so we look at you know, cue, response, reward, and we look at our physical vessel, and our brain is around 2% of our body weight on average, maybe less for some, and it uses up to like 30% of our energy. Like, thinking uses energy, emotions use energy, and so our, like, these are incredible vessels. Like one of the, in my opinion, one of the greatest inventions, so to say, of the universe. You know, the human brain, the human vessel, and if you look at some of Da Vinci's work and how he breaks that down of all the, you know, the measurements and the angles, and you know, the golden mean and or the golden ratio, and then we look into this, and if we had to think about every breath, every heartbeat, we would go insane.
Every little organ and stuff.
Exactly. So in the same way that our bodies have created these habits so that we don't have to think, like this automation, so we've also created automation in our lives. And that's like, you know, we look at taxes, you know, we look at, you know, infrastructure, roads, schools, hospitals. Like, if every individual had to be making choices on that level, first of all, they might not be interested, so they don't have the education and really viable for that. But it's about understanding that we create these structures around our civilization. It allows us to come together and work together as a people. And I think we've just kind of, we've gone off track a little bit, I think, because of, again, it's kind of this pedestaling of leaders, and this power we've given away. And almost, and it comes back to kind of like this victim mentality of, like, you know, where people are like saying, oh, but the government want this, or they're doing this, or they're doing this. And it's like understanding that we've created all of this to a degree. Like people vote, and while we might not live in a full, true democracy, we still have a lot of blessings where we are depending on where we live.
Yeah.
But it's like to understand that these structures and these systems have been designed ultimately to make our lives easier, and to make things flow and to create more harmony. And I still think, like, I have friends, family who work in government, and like when I hear people saying like, oh, the government are out to get us, or they want this control or this and that, it's like I still think most people I know who are in government or doing that, they're in that position because they want to help. They want to be providing an opportunity for people to live their best life. But I guess what that best life looks like changes from person to person. So on a deeper level, I think this is it's twofold. It's the idea of it's the idea of us versus them. It's the idea of like, oh, there's some evil, evil people in the world who are trying to control us all, and I mean, who knows? There's some interesting conspiracy theories out there and some great information, but still, even then, even like the most evil person on the face of this planet, like God and Satan, like they're the same person. Like these are still part of us. It's still part of this, and that's why we have to collectively heal. This is why it's so important to come back to realize that, like, moving away from this duality, this which is like, again, we talk about Buddhist beliefs of like, the attachment to good and bad. Like, what's to say that something's good or bad? That this is us putting a label on things, and this is where so much of our core human motivation comes from chasing pleasure and avoiding pain. And so it's like taking away that and not becoming, and Kev and I spoke a bit about this, about not becoming detached, but not necessarily having this attachment to what is good and what is bad.
It's this like weird dance, and that I think like the thing that's really hard for people to grasp, like there's a little quote I always say, and it's very strange, but it's like the answer is both. And I think too many people are always like, is technology good or bad? And some people are like, yeah, it's really good. Some people are like, oh, it's really bad. It's like it's both. Like, it can be both. Even at the same time, it can be both. It doesn't have to be one or the other. But to really grasp that concept, I think it's really hard for people. And I think sometimes people in, whether it's like, let's say, government or any sort of system, any sort of thing, they kind of polarize it one way or the other, not realizing it can be both. And like the answer, like when I talk about the answer is both, it's like that happens in all aspects of our lives when I like really observe things. And it's like, are we living, or like are we growing older, or are we dying? It's like it's both happening at the same time. And there's all these like things in our lives that are actually pulling us this way but also the other way. It's just whether we're conscious of like which way do we want to kind of drive with that. And yeah.
I like that. And I think it's like just understand, like coming back to realize that in every opportunity, or in every problem, there lies an opportunity. So and it's like exactly. The way I see things is we're at this crossroads at the moment, and people, and I'm such, like, especially come from a mum who's an environmental scientist, and like so much love for our Pachamama and how much bites in nature and how much intelligence there is in nature.
Yeah.
But it's like ultimately, it's like the way things are going. I mean, and it is a real, it's an absolute travesty of how many other life forms have suffered because of humanity. When you look at how many animal species think, due to our behavior. But it's like in the long run, I guess like Pachamama, like our Earth will survive. She'll repair. Yeah. It's whether we're making this, like if like, for example, like look at bees and the importance of bees and pollination. Like without bees, we are in a lot of trouble. We are in a world of strife. But if you look at like insects, if insects were to die, if all insects were to die and just be suddenly extinct, we would perish within weeks, months.
That's crazy.
It's absurd. But it's like But if humans were to perish, all other life would flourish.
I feel
Uh,
like that's it. There's something so interesting about that always like I don't know. It just gets me like so like there's something different about us, and I think everyone needs to kind of like yeah, no, have it like think about that. Like there is something different about us. That the fact that we are like it's kind of like Earth is this place, and it's like humans got put there, and it's like it don't matter if they're there or not. It's kind of like in a weird sense, it's like are we really like native to here or something like that? Like it really feels like we're different in some way, shape, or form.
100%. I was talking. I've got a friend of mine. He is a videographer for National Geographic and an older German guy. And we were talking about this exactly, kind of about like different life forms and aliens and an alien might be. And I mean, there's a chance that we're all aliens. You know,
100%.
there's a chance that we're all aliens and we're here. And that's like if we look at the indigenous cultures, if we look at the indigenous people, like they know how to live off the land. And whereas what we've come and done is we've ravished the lands. But the beautiful thing, and I hear people talking about this. I hear people talking, oh well, humans are just kind of like a virus, or and I mean, I can understand that mentality, but the difference is that we have the capacity and the ability to be aware of that and to change that. So we can work with nature and we can create a better earth. We can really we have that. And we're at this crossroads right now, and you see this. There are so many people who are when we look at like that we look at the governments coming together and talking about climate change and all of these things. There's a level of awareness there, and the way I see it is that we're at a crossroads and we've got a decision to make, and it's either we evolve or we become extinct. Like these are the two options. And the way I see it, as someone of great belief and great faith in humanity, I see us waking up. I see us evolving. I see us making these changes. It's just that these changes aren't necessarily what is reported about. And this is again when we start to come back to like control and mainstream media and how this information is shared. And this is why again why it's so important where we're taking our information from and where we're creating our perception of what life is. So I think there's a possible chance that we're all from different parts of the universe, and we've come here on this beautiful planet, which is paradise. I mean, it's incredible. If we delve deeper into nature and the intricacies of ecosystems and the perfect harmony and balance that exists, like the Earth is alive, and there's so much intelligence in the Earth. And I think if we can realize that, we talk like someone like Elon Musk, who's got some great ideas and obviously a very intelligent guy. That not gonna argue that. He talks about that's with SpaceX and building rockets and getting off planet and habitating, creating a habitat and living life on Mars. And I think great, like on one sense of like becoming interstellar, becoming planetary in terms of the survival of our species, but we've got to come back at the root cause of the problem. And what's to say that we don't just then go and do exactly what we did on Earth on Mars? So we have to come back, and I think we have this incredible opportunity here now, and so it's so important that we heal what's here. And this again, the healing, we find out what's at the core of us. We delve deep into our being, into all aspects of ourselves. No suppression. Being able to open up and have these conversations and communicate around that. But I think I think in my experience, like I've traveled almost 50 countries. I've met tens of thousands of people on a deep level, and I mean, I love it. I've met so many beautiful people with such warm, open hearts, and that has been my experience. And sure, maybe that's because of my internal reality. That's what I'm attracting. But even then, I think it's so much about the way information is broadcasted. And we look at the news. Like, what percentage of the news is positive?
Yeah, that's the biggest thing I always talk about.
It's crazy. And is that a direct reflection of how life is?
No.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. So much of life is beautiful and positive, and that's why it's so important that for us to understand. And then we can even, if we talk about Elon Musk, we can talk about simulation theory and, what this life is a movie, is a video game, is a simulation, whatever, is it a dream? Whatever it is, we're in it.
Yeah.
And, um, and this is, but also to understand, like, from I guess from my background with, computers and things as well, as like to understand that maybe we are the program, but also to understand we also have the ability to be the program.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we can reprogram our brain, and this is neuroplasticity. We can change the way we think about things.
This is the feedback loop that I'm talking about. We're the programmer and the program at the same time. It's like we're feeding onto ourselves consistently, and it's like it just keeps coming up, and it feels like it's this complex thing that we can't really comprehend. Like how crazy this is. The fact that you keep feeding information into yourself and building on like this reality, but that's what it keeps coming down, like to me at least. Um, I want to touch on this stuff because there's a lot of stuff that you just said in there that I think rings true. And when we talk about healing, I I I lost my train of thought. There was something that you said before, but basically in terms of healing, right? Like when we're at the crossroads, like I think a lot of people understand that there's decisions kind of like needed to be made about whether we're gonna essentially take control of our lives and like start choosing a certain path, or we're gonna let someone else essentially choose our path for us. Um, in terms of healing, what's your perception of the healing that we need to go through individually and collectively?
Mm. I guess this is again where it comes back to what I was speaking about before about duality
Mm,
and polarity. And this is to understand that in this universe we exist in, that there is two sides to the coin, and it's like the light and the dark. And if we look at the rose or any flower would not survive if it was light 24/7.
yeah.
It would wither and die. So there's both, there is positives from the light and darkness again, where it's like letting go of a attachment to what's good and bad. It's like this balance, this
Mm,
harmony, I think is so important. And I think um, a big one for us to understand is like, yeah, letting go of expectations, letting go of really putting that, chasing that pleasure.
mm,
And I think a big part of that as well is like the relationship between the masculine and the feminine,
mm,
the yin and the yang. And this is where we have polarity. And we look at this like two magnets, two magnets. They're attracted, they're opposite ends,
mm.
they come together. They're the same ends,
Yeah.
they push away. And I think this takes a deeper level of understanding, like I said, that we all have the light and the dark in us. We all have the masculine and the feminine within us.
We have the
Um,
capability to be a virus or like positive, like connection, like a good
exactly,
cell, good cell
exactly,
in this whole thing. And
exactly.
that's what it always comes down to. Again, the answer is both. It's like you have these things, but yeah,
Yeah,
continue.
exactly. So we could be the antibody or the virus.
Mm,
And this is, we can be both the cause and the cure.
exactly.
And this is the, I guess, the really beautiful thing of this existence and what we're experiencing as consciousness. Yeah, and it's to really understand that there is free will. I think there is a element of, and I've delved deep into like astrology and things like this, and I think if we look deeper into that, there is pattern recognition there. There
Mm,
are things that are reoccurring, but there's also free will. We all are free and sovereign beings and have choices. Um, so I think when it comes to this, and when it comes to healing, the way I look at it is that on the macro, on the big scale of everything, we are, there is one consciousness that is encapsulates everything. Um, and with the thing is about this oneness, and I guess we can look at this as, imagine you're sitting on a tropical island paradise. Everything's perfect. You can have whatever you want, whenever you want. You live in utopia. Everything's good. You can control the weather. Like, yeah, you're a god per se. Um, but how fun would that really be after millions of years if you're just on that island by yourself?
Yeah.
Yeah, would that is that really what we've come to experience? That's in my opinion why we've created separation. Like because we want to experience ourselves. We want to experience all the beauty that we are. And especially when we start to look at this within the masculine and the feminine. And so this is a lot of my work with tantra. A lot of the work I do is really like around helping people understand masculine and feminine energies and how that flows within all of us. But there's been millennia of abuse,
Mm.
of misuse of our power and our energies. And at their core and their essence, the masculine and feminine energies, they're the polar opposites. They are literally the polar opposites. If you had someone who's 100% masculine, 100% feminine,
Mm.
there's going to be attraction there, but there's also going to be misunderstanding
Mm.
because we think about things in different ways, and even then, like I think it's also important here to note as a disclaimer is that when we speak about masculine or feminine energies, we're not talking about men and women. We're just talking about the nature of the yin and the yang,
Mm.
and and that's like there are very few people in this world who are 100% of either. It's
Of course, yeah,
a
yeah,
sliding scale.
yeah.
We all have masculine and feminine energies.
Mm.
And it's to understand that there's power within both. One is not better than the other. And I think this is where there's been a lot of um, this is where a lot of our conflict and problems have come from because the masculine has thought, oh well, this is the way we need to do things, and the masculine tends to be a bit more dominating and tends to be more receiving and taking, whereas the feminine tends to be more nurturing and giving. So it's the nature of the beast that there was this
Mm.
conflict between the two, and I think this is we can look back at medieval times, dark ages. We can look at burning the witches. We can look at some powerful masculine figures throughout history of the Napoleons or the Hitlers or and how that energy was misused and abused. And I think when it comes to healing, it's about the key to all healing. I mean, it is awareness first and foremost.
Yeah.
It's understanding that we are everything. We have all of those aspects. And even though we might be experiencing, I might be in a masculine body in this incarnation right now, but it's not to say that that I still have that feminine flow within me, and that deep love that we can have for each other, loving someone even though they are so different to us.
Yeah.
And so it comes to awareness, but also it comes to forgiveness. I think forgiveness is probably one of the most underrated emotions of what true forgiveness looks like and what happens in the brain when we really forgive someone and forgiving ourselves. And I think this is what's so important in our healing journey now is that we can forgive ourselves and learn from our past, learn from our mistakes, and find that harmony within, because without that forgiveness we can't truly love. And love is love. I mean, love for me is everything. Love is the answer to all of the questions, and love is a vibration, and for me it's the highest vibration. What love looks like, there's so many different types of love. The love that I have for my partner or my dog or to food, or there's so many different types of love. But without that forgiveness, we can't have that love. We need that love, we need that forgiveness, we need that trust, we need that belief. And this is where I think so much of the healing comes from, these two polarities, this separation which we've created to experience ourselves. And the healing for me is how close can we come to being one, but while still being separate.
I love that. That's so much of how I think. Like, just the fact that you said that is like amazing, because that's really really what I believe in terms of when we go back to the answer is both. It's like the answer is where the polarity of separation, but we're also this infinite thing that is connected. And yeah, that's so powerful, because that's exactly what I feel with, um, yeah, like why we're here and what we're meant to do. It's like we come from a place of infinite possibilities, but we create a container, a vessel, so we can experience, and that's the only way for us to grow and feedback loop others. We're just everything, and then there's no point. And
Exactly.
the way I think of it is, it's kind of like if we sit down in a room and we just have like a certain thought. Let's say we have a business idea and we're like imagining it in our head. We're like, oh, if I'm able to connect with this and I can build this, and you could go through a whole infinite timelines of you creating that business. But at the end of the day, what do? You you try to create a container. You create a business. You create a name and you create something that people can now experience, because you could experience it all in your head. You could be like, this product is amazing, you could do this, and it's like the infinite possibility is in the stillness, is in that center point. But it's understanding that we get there so that we can now create some sort of experience within ourselves and with each other. And yeah, I really love that, because I feel like it's strange, and it's always so weird for me to say, but it's like it's understanding both sides. It's understanding your oneness and your infiniteness, but also your polarity, how you can be Satan and God, how you
Exactly.
can be good and bad, and like what that means, but also together with the oneness. So
Exactly.
yeah.
Understanding that we're everything
Mm,
and also nothing,
mm. Yeah,
and
yeah,
it's not until we can let go of that attachment and to accept that maybe I'm nothing, maybe
mm,
there's nothing, but it's like only then can I step into my full power of the entirety of who I am and what we are.
mm,
And yeah, it's beautiful. And so that's my opinion of, and if I look at the science of like black
mm,
holes, singularities, and you
mm,
know like there's so much there that correlates.
mm.
um and I think like such a key, and it's something that really unlocked in me recently, was like the power of compassion. Like really being able to be happy for someone else, or to do something that has nothing to do with you whatsoever. And I guess this is why, like people talk about the ego, and I really don't think the ego is the enemy, because this is how it's
Definitely
going
not.
to
Yeah,
experience.
yeah.
But it's about having that relationship, and it's like, so I'm a I'm Libra, and I'm all about the balance. Like
Balance.
I'm
Yeah,
everything for me is about balance
yeah.
and harmony. And it's like, once, like you said, once we come to this space of balance, then we can choose which way we
Mm,
go, and what we create from there. But that's sort of our default, like being able to come back to that place of harmony. And it's like, it's setting those foundations, because what we've done is we've built our castle on a swamp,
mm.
and we're sinking.
Yeah.
And so what we need to do is, now we need to come in, we need to, whether that looks like knocking down the castle and reinforcing everything, or is there some way we can build those structures. But we need to have a solid foundation from which we can create from, and to allow everyone the opportunity to create what they want, as long as it's not harming others.
Mm,
And yeah, it's a beautiful dance. There's this
mm.
dance of polarity.
Yeah.
um, and it's like, yeah, because like I said, if we're in the, people talk about the 5D and ascension and all of these things, and um, it's like, for me, that looks like, enlightenment, ascension, and like not even trying to chase these things, because it's like, this is it.
Mm,
This is it. So it's like, on one hand, I'm kind of like, oh well, maybe this is all like, I talked about it with some of my close friends and my soul tribe. It's like, it's kind of like, yeah, spiritual cosmic training school, like
mm,
being on this earth plane, and it's about really learning and going through all these things. But then there's also the possibility of, like, I think what's so important here is not to, yeah, detach and disassociate, and then be like, oh, but I want to be back home
somewhere. Yeah,
in the
yeah,
stars or somewhere else. And it's like,
yeah.
the point is to realize that this is it. Like, this is the power, and the more that we can be happy and grateful, the power of gratitude, to see the positive sides to things and be grateful for what we have, then the
Mm,
more that we can call in, the more abundance we can have. But it's like, to be happy and grateful with less, and
mm,
realize that this is like our power, our divine essence lies in our ability to be present, our ability to be fully here, and so grateful for the magic that exists around us. And I think that's what healing looks like to me. Healing is about letting go of the stories and the conditioning, understanding, bring awareness to that, learning from my past, trusting in the future, and being able to be fully present. Because it's not until I've fully healed these parts of myself and I've let go of suppression, I've integrated all of who I am, that I can be fully present and I can create from this heart open space of love.
Hmm. That yeah, I love that. I want to ask a question because something just popped up in my head as you were like saying that. I've recently had this conversation with one of my friends in terms of like even the word healing, right? Like let's say shadow work, inner work, all these like words. I feel like I was. It's strange to say, but I feel like I've seen and experienced a lot of people talking about the constant need for like, okay, I need to heal. Like am I healed yet? Do I need to keep doing this shadow work? And what you just said just then is like being in that present moment where you don't need to heal all the time. You don't need to focus on it too much. And I feel like when I was starting to really break down my identity and start to figure out, who I am, my thought process, because this was like years before these words started becoming like a little more mainstream, I guess. So for me, I didn't have this constant thing of like I need to heal. I need to face my shadows. It was just kind of like, for me at least, it was just like let me be as honest as I can. That was the only thing. That was for me what healing is now. If I had to like break it down, I was just like I need to be honest when I feel a bit weird, when I feel like I'm lying to myself, when I feel disconnected. Like I just need to be real. And in terms of talking about the present moment, I feel like so many people are attached to healing at every second that it's like you're not okay with where you're at. And I feel like that concept is kind of like you're trying to sleep but it's in the day. It's like just live your life. Like it's the daytime. Like go live your daytime stuff. Sleep later. Like
Yeah.
when the time is right. And I think a lot of people are hyper focused on like I need to heal, I need to do this because the energy is coming. Like I think you feel it too. Like we are waking up and
Yeah.
everyone feels like it. But where's that? Because you said it perfectly. It's like the present moment is where the healing is done. It's like you just feel it, you experience it, and you try to be real, and then you move on and you just let things come. But yeah, how do you
Yeah.
feel people like uh what's the word again? It's like just really like hold on to I need to heal like at all times.
Yeah, I see this a lot, especially in the industry I work on the modalities, like with tantra, with a lot of workshops and retreats, um, and I think this is I see a lot of people who get stuck in the trauma.
Mm.
They have almost this attachment to the trauma,
Yeah.
and this is kind of like victim mentality again, because they're getting a certain, and there's a chemical response in the body or what's happening. So it's like people are they're almost addicted to the healing,
Yeah, yeah.
and which kind of defeats the purpose.
Yeah.
And I think this comes back to a few things. I think it comes back to comparison. I
Mm.
think it's about people thinking they need to be a certain something, and it's like for me, healing is just like taking off the masks.
Mm.
Just like getting rid of all the layers of things that I've built up, these stories I've told myself, to come back to my essence and the truth of who I am. This is like this is what healing looks like. It's not that it's just that I'm imperfect. I'm perfectly imperfect.
Yeah.
Um, and I love this how like the Japanese, I always forget the word, but they when they break a ceramic bowl or something and they
Oh,
put it
I
back
know the one you're
together,
talking about. Yeah. I
with
can't
it
remember
with
the
the
word.
bowl.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
because it's those cracks that make us unique.
Mm.
That's the beauty, and that's what I think this is the power is like that authenticity. Also, understanding that our journey, our story has made us who we are, and it's like all these experiences we've had. It's like if I hadn't dealt with those things, then I wouldn't have ever explored these
Yeah.
different modalities and wouldn't be able to provide these gifts to people. So, um, I think I see it a lot, and I agree with you. I think
Mm.
people get caught up in healing. I think they get so focused, and I see this again when I talk about the loop, we talk about patterns, I talk about like a capitalist model of like infinite growth. It's like infinite growth is not sustainable. It's like as long as I'm always like, as long as I'm aware and always improving a little bit, maybe it's like maybe that improvement looks like I'm increasing my breath hold time 1 second every week. Like whatever that might be. But I find that a lot of people who are experiencing these things are often coming from a place of like of lack. It's coming from a scarcity mentality. It's coming from I'm not good enough. I need to do more. I need to
Yeah, yeah.
compensate for something that's missing.
Mm.
Whereas like true abundance mindset is like, hey, here I am. Like, yeah, I'm not perfect,
Mm.
but I am. I'm perfectly me, and there's no one else who is me. And it's like that coming back to that authenticity. That is what for me healing looks like. And it's like again, thank you, Dad. But he's like he always said that the only person that really matters is the person who's looking back in the mirror.
Mm.
Like as long as you, at the end of the day, in all your infinite wisdom and knowledge, can you look yourself in the eyes? You can sleep at night. You can say, look, I'm a good person. I'm happy with how I've lived my life and how I treat people. Yeah, I made mistakes, but I learned from them.
Mm.
Or like I can forgive myself for those things I've done and those people I've hurt because it's gonna happen.
Mm.
It's inevitable. We can't please everyone. We can't keep everyone happy. But if we can look at ourselves at the end of the day and stare at ourselves in the mirror and be like, I fucking love you.
Mm.
Like I've seen all your shit. I've seen what you've been through. And I love you. If we can really have that, that's what healing looks like. Not comparisons, not looking at worrying what anyone else is doing, but just taking a good, deep, hard, honest look at ourselves and understanding that maybe that isn't a destination.
Mm.
Maybe
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. Yeah,
destination.
yeah.
And it's like, and this is coming from a hardcore recovering perfectionist.
Mm. Yeah.
So like I understand, I get it. I put, like I said, I put the weight of the world on my own shoulders. I place so much expectation on myself. But letting go of that, letting go and realizing that this is magic. Like this whole experience, maybe we are divine beings, and maybe we've created all this just so we can experience this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. I think you hit it like on the hammer. Like, it's yeah. It just comes back to the comparison thing, hey, or like trying to. It just comes down to again, it's steering away from the present moment. Essentially, just like I need to be on this path at this time, this destination, and yeah, I've heard it a lot, and that's why I wanted to bring it up because there's so many people that are on this path right now, and it's amazing. It's so good to see, and I feel like it's just kind of that cycle that they keep eating themselves, like like they just forgot how to say it, but they keep putting that pressure on themselves to just keep going, and it's definitely just coming down to like if you can look yourself in the mirror, like that's really what it comes down to. It's the whole truth. It's just when you are by yourself, can you just speak to yourself and be honest and open and truthful? If you can do that, then it's like that's all you need for today. Really, like that's the advice I would even say is that's enough for today. If you can sit down and be like, hey, cool, I was pretty truthful and pretty honest about how I feel. That's good for today. Let whatever come and experience and change and grow from that, but just let it be for today. Yeah.
I think that's a beautiful note to we might have to do a round two on this, but I think that's a beautiful note to maybe start to wrap up on. I completely agree. I feel like there's so much we can delve into.
I know there's so much.
I feel like we could go on forever, but I think that's such a beautiful note of just like, that's what's important at the end of the day, because you have to live with yourself, and it's like you will start to attract those people in your life who see you for you when you see you. When you can see yourself, when you can understand yourself, when you can love yourself, then you'll attract those people who do the same. And this is like, this for me is like, this is the deepest human motivator. We all want to love and be loved. We all want to fit in and be understood, and that has to start with it. And that's at the core of everything for me, is that everything that's happening externally is that internal reflection. So everything that I want in my life, I have to start doing here within, and sometimes that requires taking action.
Yeah.
Sometimes it requires making change.
100%. Thank you so much. I usually end each episode real quick on, because this whole like show is based on asking like questions, and I want to like throw it your way in terms of, is there a question in your life right now that you're kind of thinking about, or kind of trying to figure out? Is there something that you might want to ask, and I'll try to get people either comment, link stuff, and just kind of figure things out. Is there something in your mind? What's your biggest question
My biggest question, yeah,
right now, at least?
yeah, there's a lot of
Yeah.
questions, and my whole life has been such a delving deep in these questions and finding answers. The current situation, I guess, like the biggest one that comes up for me, and I think 'cause I've done so much healing work for myself and for my clients, um and it's like, how can I best serve? That's probably the one thing that comes to me now, is like, how can I best utilize my energy to help people to really find this self-belief and this self-love for themselves. So yeah, and maybe that's a good one to put to the audience, because maybe someone has, and I've got some ideas.
Yeah.
I'm kind of doing it. I think this is a fantastic way to do it. But I think that's probably the biggest, like, with the transitions I'm going through. Like, I'm getting away from like sort of my one-on-one coaching. I'm doing more group programs and things like this. But it's like, what do people need right now? Like, what do people need? And probably particularly, like, I feel a strong call. I work with everyone, but especially the masculine. Like, what
Okay.
what does the modern man need today to feel like he can be in his power and his greatness?
Awesome. I feel like, yeah, we're definitely gonna have a round two and like talk about that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it, and there's so much in this that resonated with me, and I hope, yeah, the people listening like got something out of it as well. So yeah, thank you so much, man. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Brother,
Thank you.
much appreciated.